Hey gamers, it's Casey, and I give this podcast a 7 out of 10 because it has too much water.
Hi, I'm Brendan, the ghost of unpaid invoices past, present, and future.
And I'm Jason. I still think about those negative comments you all wrote about me so many years ago. Welcome to RPGaymer, episode 8, a podcast about working in the gaming industry.
Hey guys, so today we have a special guest, Brendan. He is a gaming journalist. He's written for GameSpot, Lifehacker, Wired, IGN, and
I've heard of these places, and I've read them too. It's great.
He also has created an indie game, and he has a co-op print and play tabletop card game. And he's also a very talented YouTuber who just released a almost 2-hour documentary on the history of Metroid on his YouTube channel, The Crawl. The Crawl. We've known each other, maybe like a couple of years-ish via Twitter and just sort of the same journalism circles.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on today.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for having me. I'm super excited to talk to you both. Casey's been a while. We've never really had a really in-depth conversation before, so I'm stoked about that.
Just some DMs.
Also, it's weird hearing all of the stuff that I do listed out because I don't think that I do too much, and now I'm thinking maybe I do too much.
I went on your muck rack because I knew some of the sites, but I was like, if there's anything big I wanted to include, it was like you have written almost 3,000 articles.
Whoa,
and
that's
I was
impressive.
Like, that's so many.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah.
I think I have like 300 from my short stint writing in the gaming world.
I didn't realize it was that many. I knew it was I knew I had passed 1,000 2 years ago, which means that I oof.
Well, you've been cranking them out the past few years then. That's a lot.
I guess so. Yeah. I mean, it's that's really cool. I didn't know. So actually, I'm glad you did that because I'm like, wow, I feel very accomplished.
Yeah, no, that's pretty incredible. I don't often look at people's muck racks. And for people who don't know, muck rack is like a gaming journalism portfolio profile site where you can sort of create a portfolio. It kind of combines all the things you write, so it's all in one spot.
Is this nice gaming specific thing or just portfolios all over?
It's like a journalism aggregate thing. It's I think it exists primarily so that PR folks and journalists can communicate and meet up, sync up. But a lot of journalists use it for a portfolio. They aggregate it for you, and it exists whether you claim your profile or not. So I know a lot of other people just go, I guess I'm just going to use this because it's convenient and I don't have to pay for it. So yeah.
Right.
Interesting. I'm going to check that out later. I don't know what even would be there for me.
You probably have one and don't even realize.
They do give it to people who don't. Yeah. Yeah. If you've written for probably any bigger-ish or even medium site.
Yeah.
So
all good.
So that sort of gives us an introduction to Brendan, and Jason and I both have a little bit of a background in gaming journalism, but do we want to start with sort of why each of us were inspired to become gaming journalists and how that sort of career path took off? Yeah.
I can start on that one. Sorry, let me clear my throat. Oh my God, guys. This coffee's getting me. We'll cut all this out. Don't worry.
Yeah. Or make Patrick.
Or he's not going to cut it and it's going to be evil edited to me.
Love you, Patrick.
Thanks. I can start with that. So I think for me, it's funny, Brendan, you're like, I didn't know I did all those things. Because if I look back, I'm like, yeah, I started 10 years ago. No, it was 20. It was a long time. Oh my God. But I started on the semi-professional path, if you will. Was able to kind of get in the industry and write for Inside Gaming Daily's blog. That's Machinima's blog. Threw around pitches at other locations too that never really got picked up. But then started just making my own content, blog, YouTube, things like that too. More on the side just for fun. The inspiration for me doing it though was really wanting to give back to the community that I grew up kind of loving. I loved reading articles about older games, retro games. Well, I guess at the time they weren't old or retro, they're just old and retro now. But I liked that. I liked RPGs. There was this wild, crazy thing called the internet that started to happen when I was younger, and so it was neat to find more stuff. So when I got to being creative and being able to write my own, I wanted to create stuff that I would have liked to read when I was younger. So things
Mhm.
like, hey, did you like Final Fantasy? Have you heard of Grandia? Like things like that. Like I never really knew.
That's
That's
awesome.
awesome.
Jinx.
Thanks.
Pinch poke. Yeah, I can go next. I would say, I mean, I think all three of us, we love video games. So I don't think there's
A little
any
bit.
debate.
Get out of here.
I've dabbled.
There's no debate there, but like I've always connected with and played video games because of the stories and narrative. And,
Yeah.
And I mean, initially I thought maybe I wanted to write for video games, but that ended up being something that it's a lot harder to break into. But I just remember spending so much time in my like our elementary school library reading like Nintendo Power and Game Pro and Game Informer, and just loving just reading about them. If I wasn't reading a book, which I read a lot as a kid, I was reading something about video games. And then journalism just sort of, I guess, happened because it's a little bit easier to sort of break into, I suppose.
Yeah.
Sometimes feels like that. Sometimes I wonder, though.
Yeah.
No, agreed. Agreed. I mean, I did have a handful of like small lucky breaks, but you know.
Right. Yeah.
What about you, Brendan? What inspired you to start
Okay.
your career path?
Well, so it's the short story. The short answer is that as a kid, I really liked games, obviously, and my dad would buy my brother and I Game Pros. Or like Nintendo Powers and stuff every once in a while. So that was where I first encountered the reality that people were out there writing about video games. But for me, I just wanted to make games when I was younger, and I would like draw little, like I would do a book. It was like a playable booklet of levels that I had rules for that involved like dice or cards and stuff. And it would be based on like Crash Bandicoot or Zelda or Mario or whatever. And I would make them and I would print them out, or not print them out, I would draw them out, and my friends in school would like rent them from me.
Oh, really?
During our like free time or whatever. And so I was just obsessed with the idea of making games. And it really wasn't until I was in middle school and I got my first subscription to PC Gamer that it really solidified that I think I want to write about games. And then I discovered podcasts like 5 or 6 years after that. And I really like listening to podcasts. So that it was like this slow ramp up to just being like, actually, I think I want to do journalism. I really like everything they do. Ooh, podcasts. Ooh, all this other stuff that they do. And I just started dabbling with it in college. I had a blog and I was freelancing in quotes because I wasn't getting paid for a few smaller websites. And then I got hired like right out of college at Digital Trends as a they call it an editorial assistant, but really what it was I was a part-time staff writer. And that was kind of like, that's the whole trajectory. It was like, really it was those magazines when I was younger that really that sparked the whole thing.
Who are some journalists that you both look up to? Maybe someone you read when you were a kid, like a Nintendo Power, though I don't think I have anyone like that. But are there people in the industry now that you look up to?
Well, certainly like in the industry now, I think that like over at IGN, you have Matt Kim, Reb Valentine, and Kat Bailey doing their their news section, and that's like an all-star trio in my mind. Austin Walker was also a really I really like what Austin did before he's still around. He's on the dev side of things now. He's writing for games, not just about them.
I think for me, I'm feeling like maybe I'm a little bit older, but I also grew up, I think, online watching and reading GameSpot most. So I think that a lot of influence for like what I wanted to do, even just with my blog and writing style, came from them. Jeff Gertzman was a big influence. Brian Crescenti. I moved over to Kotaku, so I really liked following Stephen Totillo. And just, I think because these people wrote in styles that I enjoyed reading and like also writing about. Like there's deadpan humor and jokes. There's clear knowledge in like games. So I really associated with them. And like nowadays I feel like I kind of read whatever. Like whatever is there. Like I'll still follow Polygon and like what they have and just read their content. But there's such a shift to like videos in my mind. So a lot of video creators and content that you see nowadays too. But really I think I latched onto them because I would hesitate to say echo chamber, but I think it was like, that's what I wanted to hear and read about. And so I seeked out the things that they would write. Cause like, okay, I can learn from this. I can learn how to write better. I can learn to enjoy my reading, and then I can just learn about more video games.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
What was because you mentioned like a specific style. I'm curious, was it reviews? Was it news? What was the thing for you?
That I enjoyed like reading?
Yeah, like what was the thing like, oh, this is if I could do this, or I want to do more of this. Like
for sure. I feel like it evolved over the years, but I think when I started, I should say, it was all about reviews. Like it just seemed cool to have like I would get paid to play a video game. Like, yes, please. Like that would be so cool.
It's like groundbreaking.
Yeah, it's like totally groundbreaking. Like X-Play, like, oh my God. So that was kind of where it started. But after a while, especially doing the job, it was like, man, sometimes you play some shit games. Like I don't want to always do that. And I think from like reading those reviews, like finding the fun in even talking about bad games, like that was kind of what started. And like, dear God, I have so many bad video games in my collection now. It's probably because of that.
For me, kind of what Brendan said earlier, like IGN, like they're my go-to website, them and GameSpot, just for reviews, for news. And I mean, I'm a little biased, I guess, because I wrote there for a bit, but Rebecca Valentine she's before I even was at IGN, she was easily one of my favorite journalists. She's funny. She's really good at turning like mundane information into like a well-planned, thought out piece, which I really appreciate, because I could not listen to the calls that she has to listen to for just like reports and then turn that into like a good news story. And I also appreciate that she takes time to highlight indie game devs on IGN, because I mean they're probably the biggest, if not the biggest gaming websites. So I'm glad that she can give smaller games a platform there. I also love Kim Wallace. She was at Game Informer for a long time, but she left I think in the last year to do consulting. But I've always identified with her a lot because of her reviews, or her fondness for RPGs. She's a big RPG nerd. Like every review she's ever written for a role-playing game, I've like been like,
legit,
that's exactly what I think. and I love it. And I also like just kind of sort of Game Informer in general, as I live in Minneapolis. They're based in Minneapolis. There's so many people here who I love online who like, I mean, I don't know where they live, but like, it's like some of them like, I know you live in Uptown. I'm going to run into you one day.
Can we hang out maybe?
Probably. I will. I've almost done it. I've almost done it, but I'm like, that'd probably be really weird. I'd be like, can I buy you coffee? And we just like talk and I pick your brain. But
I mean, maybe they would say yes. I say go ahead and
do it.
Yeah.
I've thought about it, but I haven't been brave enough to do that yet.
Speaking of
maybe one day.
Speaking of a publication that's doing like good documentary work, Alex and Blake over there at Game Informer, incredible
Their
stuff.
Is
They're
great.
So good. I talk with Alex every once in a while, and because he and I both have an interest in like indie development, and man, even before that, I was just always so inspired by the two of them. They're really good. Yeah,
they're really. I love Game Informer. They've gone through some real crap in the last year or so with all the layoffs and stuff, but they're making it work.
Honestly, I know there's a lot of, when you get into, we wouldn't have to get into it too much, but when you get into the industry, there's kind of a clickiness, especially between certain like publications or types of publications. But I have never really cared about that. And to be fair, I still consider myself like a D-list games journalist.
Sure.
I'm not really in any of the circles necessarily. I'm really close friends with Xeon at Nintendo Life. Like that's about the closest, like he and I hang out a lot in our daily life, and that's about the closest like person that I hang out with in the games industry, like in real life, I should say. And you know, I guess what I'm trying to say is I admire almost everyone that I have crossed paths with, who I know, who I work with. I don't really have any person in like that I have a problem with, and I enjoy almost everyone's writing or content that they make. Maybe some more aligned with my tastes, but I don't know. I think our industry is really cool, and it's filled with a lot of really interesting people from such a wide variety of backgrounds now. Like that didn't exist 5, even 10 years ago, and now it does. And I think that that's awesome, and I love that about what we get to do.
Yeah, I can agree with that too. I feel like it's super neat to see, like, as games grow older, like the scope also like expands, you know, exponentially with it. because like I was saying before, like, I love my retro games. They're only getting retroer, and so like it's really cool that industry, or not industry, I guess, that fan base, if you will, has been expanding too. So you get more content, you get more videos, more podcasts, more reviews, more websites. It's just really cool. And then that in turn will hopefully inspire more people to like go work at Game Informer, go to IGN, like write these articles, make new websites. And it's just neat. It's such a neat time to play games and dancing around the issue here. I think that journalism, it seems like, started with print media. Makes sense. There's all the Game Pros, Nintendo Powers, Game Informers in the world. And then we get the internet, which is great. And now we have Twitch and YouTube and everything in between. Like, how has that affected journalism and the game industry overall? The past few years have seen a kind of big boom in like what we have in terms of content. What do you guys think about that?
That's a good question, because I think I kind of look at it slightly differently than some of the other folks in traditional games media that I know of. I actually don't see that much of a difference between what people on Twitch and YouTube do and what we do. The biggest difference is that when you're talking about games from the point of view of a journalistic perspective, and especially one that's tied to a publication or a group of people, whether that be the late G4 or Game Informer.
Which G4? The first revival, the second revival, the third?
You're right. Yeah, exactly. And that comes with certain, talking about games in that way comes with certain expectations, both from like a journalistic ethical standpoint, and almost a like a content style standpoint that like YouTube and Twitch is not beholden to, for better and for worse. I think that a lot of folks on both sides like to, and I don't even like to say that there's sides to this, but like there are YouTubers and Twitch people who really don't like video game journalists. And I know video game journalists who roll their eyes at the idea of that. And as someone who does both and knows and interacts with people in both environments, we're really not thinking and doing that much different. In fact, like if an audience in like a Twitch viewer's audience finds out that they were doing something unethical, they'll be just as upset if they find out that a journalist entity was doing something unethical. Like the standards exist for both. I think it's evolved in good and bad ways. I don't think everything's just collapsing and going away, is what I'm trying to say. And I think that there's a certain viewpoint that maybe, hey, it's all done. We're all like, this whole thing is going away. And I'm not sure I feel that way.
Yeah, I think both are really all of it's here to stay. I do think I want to say we'll see less of like print text and like print media, but we do have things like Brendan, I think you're gonna know, is it Lost in Cult? I like people like them who are really sort of, I don't know if revitalizing is the right word, but they're just doing some really cool things with print media. Mm-hmm. But one thing I've really, I guess, enjoyed seeing in the last few years as like a writer and now like a social media manager is just I feel like, and Brendan and Jason, you guys have been in the industry longer than I have, so maybe this has always been the case, but I feel like I see a lot more like streamers and writers and people of like more from marginalized communities, and that just makes me really happy. Yeah, 100%. And those voices are often really loud and given really big platforms, and I think that's really important, and I really love and appreciate that, and I hope it continues, and I hope people aren't silenced by because I mean there's so much toxicity in the world against people who are who are marginalized in one way or the other.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that like it's nice that, if we're being totally honest, sometimes gamers can be absolute garbage and like are terrible people. But sometimes they're not, and the majority of times they are not. And so like if we can leverage that and just help one another like thrive and succeed, I mean, kind of how this podcast is doing. I mean, Brendan is here helping us like because he's a good person. Like we're helping the industry overall. I think it's neat that that exists. Like it is cool to see that. I'm really glad you called it out.
Yeah, and I think I just on the topic of just sort of like hate and toxicity, like there is so much, and I like part of me almost wants to say like a majority of like the audience, not our audience, but like the audience for like just gaming in general is toxic, but maybe it's just because those voices are the most loud. But just as someone who has to dredge through comments
Yeah.
for social media on like a giant gaming website, social media platform. It is so disheartening
Yeah.
to see like just how terrible people are. Like when Hogwarts Legacy came out, like regardless of how you feel or if you played it, like there's no need to be a complete asshole about it. But I banned like literally probably 100 people over the course of its launch week, of people like not even being like a little homophobic or transphobic, but out like posting memes of like queer people, like insinuating that they should be murdered. And it's just like, it's just so wild.
Just blatant like violent bigotry. So that week, or a couple weeks of that of the Hogwarts Legacy stuff, I was being, I'm a straight cis dude, so I wanted to make sure that the voices that needed to be heard were being heard. So I wasn't really like out there like I was saying stuff, but I was trying to retweet and boost folks. And man, that was the most like disappointed I have been in some of my friends and just some people who even write and cover games. That was a weird one. And I'm not going to name any names, but there were folks out there who like I work with and talk to who do stuff in games, who were, your likes are public, guys. Like, and
sometimes pop up in your feed.
Yeah. And I was certainly disappointed in realizing, oh wow, this person who I thought I shared a lot of similar thoughts on Final Fantasy or something, and they turn out to be to literally be wishing that several of my close friends just didn't exist. That was really disappointing. And I think the thing about that is it's everywhere, so it's going to show up in games, and I don't think it's unique to games. Certainly not.
No, 100% not.
People need to understand that when you write those comments, someone, in this case it was Casey, is on the other side filtering through because you're like being a bad person, like you're being mean. And like when will that person, and I do truly believe that at some point they will rationalize in their head, I'm kind of being a dick, and like they might stop that. And I think it's going to come from people like Casey, like Brendan, and like myself, giving the right voices, saying the right things, writing about things that are relevant, giving voices to those others, and removing this sort of, I don't know, disgrace that gaming journalism might have across the board, and trying to make it more, I don't know, more positive all across the board.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, that was a little heavy, so we're going to take a little break, and we're going to come back and talk more about some fun stuff about gaming journalism. We will be right back.
And we're back. That was sad, but an important and worthwhile conversation. Yes. I think it was a good discussion.
There's
but let's
definitely
dial
nothing
it up.
else negative to talk about in the games industry.
Sure.
We will say nothing negative from here on out, no promises. So let's talk about a little more fun things. Sure. What are some of your favorite parts? What are the most fun things that you enjoy doing as part of working in the industry? What gives you fuel? What gives you life?
I mean, I get to play video games, and like that's pretty cool. I think that I'm in a little more unique one now, where like professional life for me is like a side. Like I have a separate job that has nothing to do with gaming, but like it does allow me to be creative. Like I can do what I want. I see a ton of listicles and like articles about top 10s and whatnot, so I can do that if I want. But I'd rather just not do that and do something counter and have fun with like. Let's do a stream for old PlayStation games. Let's write an article about games that never got a re-release. Like, these are things that I enjoy. And again, harkening back to why I write is to give back to the community that I enjoyed, and to write for, younger Jason. Like, this is what I would want to see 20 years ago.
No, I love that.
Yeah, it's really fun. And I think I kind of know full well that a lot of people are not reading my blog, like mostly my friends, maybe someone stumbles across it. But for me, it's the joy of knowing I created something. Like Brendan was like, I made this Metroid like retrospective, or what was it? What did you call it?
Documentary.
Documentary, yeah.
Yeah.
Like Brendan made this Metroid documentary. I can look back and think, I made this article all about Shining Force, and like I like that. I think it's fun, and that gives me joy. And that's kind of what sparks me to do more. And then if someone says something like a comment on my Instagram, like, hey, I played this game too, or have you heard of this? Like, that's what it's all about. Like, it's building that community for me and just having fun, meeting others that are like-minded, and just spreading the fun factor of games all across the world.
I would say, I mean, my initial thought was when I was still writing, because social media now, but was getting to review games, because I think either one or both of you kind of alluded to it earlier, that was like the ultimate, like, oh my God, I get to play video games and get paid for it. And I don't know, I haven't reviewed like a ton, but maybe I've reviewed like 10 or 15 or 20 games, but and I loved it, but sometimes you have to play a game, and even if it's good, it's like, this is a 50-hour game.
Yeah.
They don't pay you
Crank out that
for the
review.
hour for those for those 50 hours.
Exactly.
So it's like, and it was really like, I reviewed Horizon Forbidden West when it came out, and it was my game of the year that year, but I kept getting sidetracked by side quests, and I was like, I just need to beat this
it.
so I can write the review. But it's like, I probably spent like 10 or 15 hours. I really didn't need to, but it's like, because I love the game. You know? But I also think what you said, the community, and like getting to meet and know people and connect with others who have similar, like more niche interests, like with you, like game collecting. I think that's really important, and I do love that. I've met a lot of really cool people like Brendan, who I wouldn't have known otherwise. Maybe I'd seen an article by you or whoever, but
I think like,
I really, really love that.
The community aspect of it and the connections are 100% my favorite part of it. I will say, the contrarian opinion here. I don't like writing reviews. I am very happy that I have pretty much avoided reviews almost my entire career, with the exception of like right at the beginning, I was doing a lot of game reviews. I review a lot of tech, like I do headsets, keyboards, that sort of stuff, which allows me to play whatever I want. Because let me tell you, not a lot of people are trying to ask for reviews of Japan only emulated obscure dungeon crawlers. You know, that's what I like to play.
I mean, that's what I want to hear about. Like,
right. I know. Exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, we're out there, but not because, any malicious reasons, but IGN and IGN and GameSpot aren't really looking for that right now.
Yeah, they're pretty mainstream for what they want.
Yeah, exactly. So finding the community of people who like those kinds of games is always really exciting. The other thing, though, and it kind of ties into this for me, my favorite type of thing to do is interviews. I love interviews.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And it's something that I very rarely have been able to do until like the last 2 or 3 years. Nice. And I will always jump at the opportunity to do it. And I've gotten to interview some really cool folks. We'll probably talk about that a little later. But that to me that's right now what's giving me a lot of fuel, is like this idea of, with the Metroid documentary, I interviewed like 18 people.
Wow.
I was going to ask how many people you
it was a lot of people, and it was a lot of work, but it was just so energizing. And like, that's the kind of content that I always say content, but that's a whole other thing. I mean, like, that's the kind of material that I consume and want to watch is interviews. I want to read interviews. And so, that is my absolute favorite thing about the job right now. I pretty much gravitate to two types of things. I gravitate to stuff that takes me weeks or even months to do and are extremely in-depth and creative, or that take me 10 minutes to do and are the easiest, simplest, most mechanically minded things. Yeah,
exactly.
Brendan, would you say, so we talked about like our favorite, our most fun things. Would you say that reviews are your least favorite part, or do you have a least favorite part of working in the, like, as a journalism?
Okay. So I,
Here it comes.
Okay. I don't want to get too in the weeds here because this is a topic. I was actually asked this a couple months ago. I did like a Q&A thing, and I was kind of asked about some of this
for
stuff.
your on YouTube.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of realities about games journalism and just media and journalism and just being, in my case, a freelancer in general, that a lot of people do not understand. And one of the biggest ones is how payment works.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
And it's extremely precarious sometimes, I guess is the right word. Last year, I went almost 6 months without payment from one specific place because of a constant string of problems on their end with their like they got bought by a place, then the place that they were using that were fulfilling the invoices, they all rolled over to a different company, and so it was a really long time. That is financially extraordinarily difficult, which it creates a lot of stress. And so that little joke I had at the beginning about unpaid invoices, past, present, and future,
it's grounded in realism.
It really is. And that to me, if there is one thing about just journalism and freelance journalism, or freelance media, it's that it's so difficult. People think like, oh, why are you complaining? You know, you got to do whatever. It's way better than being a construction worker or a barista or whatever, what have you. And in some ways that might be true, but there are always negatives. There's always stress. And for me, in my experience, not getting paid or getting paid very little or not on time is the worst. And there are days where I go, actually, you know what? Maybe I do want to go back to being a barista that like I was 10 years ago. And because at least I knew that every 2 weeks I was getting paid. And I knew roughly how much I was going to get. Whereas like I'll invoice and they'll be like, hey, actually, this is an invoice from 2 months ago. So we're not paying you what you expected. Good luck paying rent, that sort of thing.
God.
It's been, I won't get too into it, but because I think that this is a separate issue than like, it's not directly related to games journalism. It's more of the realities of our economic realities and how being a freelancer works. So yeah, I don't like the pay structure. I love the freedom. I love the flexibility of all that. But if there's one thing that I could magically change, I would be paid more consistently. I don't even necessarily need to be making more money. It's just, I just want to be paid
the money
on
they
time.
Told you.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Casey, what about you?
I had kind of forgotten. Well, I guess I hadn't forgotten. Yes, the trying to get paid as a freelancer sucks. I thankfully had a pretty good time in my 2 years freelancing. Though when you were talking, I was like, oh wow, I still didn't get my last invoice from it's like a medium website I wrote for, and I like tried for months because there was like an ownership change, and then they pivoted their website from like one gaming related thing to NFTs. I won't say who they are. Yeah. You probably haven't heard of them, but I still haven't got paid from them, and I'm really bummed. But for me, I just like, I've talked about it a little bit on this podcast, but I've always struggled with anxiety, and thankfully, as I've gotten older, it's gotten like infinitely better.
Good.
But working as a freelancer, like, it really like would turn my anxiety knob like up, and like especially like, and I'm gonna say the name because I don't think they did anything bad. It was on me, but like working for IGN was so stressful. Doing news, like many news articles a day, because they are so particular in a really good way. Like they're particular because they're a really good gaming website and they have high standards. So like anytime I wrote anything, I'd have like this long checklist to make sure I did all the things. And I really never messed up, but like that would always like stress me out so much.
It hangs over you, and it's so terrible. I hate it. I know what you mean. I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, you get it. But I did love it, and I sometimes do miss working for them, but and that anxiety can be really anywhere, but it was especially high there just because they are, to me, like the gold standard for like freelance. Like just, they're so big and the audience is so big. And I remember one time I had like a little, it was like kind of a typo. Like it was a movie. It was like an entertainment news article. And I said, I think I called someone the director of a movie, and whoever edited my article didn't catch it. And then they weren't. And then it got published and they put it on Facebook, and the article went viral. And it was like, and like their community manager DM'd me, and they were like, hey, and they told me, and it was like, I was like so mortified because it was maybe like my like fifth thing I wrote for them. Thankfully, it was fine. But my least favorite part is anxiety.
Yeah. I feel on that one too. I think I don't think it was the worst part for me, but knowing like, ooh, I'm gonna say something that I do not like about this game, but I bet people will like. That's always kind of rough when the article goes out. But hopefully it's okay. I think for me the least favorite part, and it's really the reason why I was like, this isn't really the life for me, is just the constant having to like, I don't know, promote yourself, suck up to people, message in to like do things to get enough money to like live off of that life. Like it's tough, and I think that it could be fun and it could be exhilarating for people, but I feel like I'm not that people. Like it's not what I want to do. I think I like more of the comforts. Like Brandon was like, you were a barista, so having that solid payment, and same for me. So like at the time, I actually did apply for a position at IGN, and I went to their office like for the interview. I was called back for that, and I was like, nice, this is so great. I did not get the job, and I think it was the right thing. Like it wasn't what I needed. It wasn't going to be what I needed to do, and I think it's just because I reevaluating like what I needed in my life. It wasn't that sort of hecticness. It was more of the grounded. Here's a job that I have pay and benefits that will support my family. So like that's when I was like, this is not what I need to do right now. And it sucked. It sucked that like this thing I wanted to do for a long time, like, I don't think I'm willing to put forth what is required of this. And that can kind of hurt, but on a positive, like pivot that around and be like, but I can write, I can still write, I can create content, I can play games. And so like, I can still do these things for fun now. And there's no pressure from others. And I think it's nice. So it was a nice middle ground for me, at least.
Yeah. Well, and especially too, because even if you had gotten that job at IGN, let's say, I mean, regardless of if you're freelance or staffed, I mean, there's so much turnover, and, CEOs decide to take a company in a different direction all the time. And the people who suffer for that are like the writers, the people who make the content, who write the articles. And that's, people lose their jobs all the time, as we've seen in the last, year or 2 years. Has been really, really chaotic. And so, even if the freelance side has its, its uncertainties, but so does being a staffed, salaried, in some cases tenured editor. Like if there's any part I think that people should know is not that great, it's that part.
Yeah, it's that part. Because I feel like you only see the glamorous side. Like you see the article, you see the video that comes out, but there's a lot of background that goes into that, even just for writing. Like I think in the process that we would do, like I would request a game, like, hey, can I review this? They'd say yes, or they say no, and then there would be an initial draft, a rough draft, like edited draft, and a final draft. So like this one review gave me like five documents that I had to do for one thing. So much back and forth. And like, it's great. It should be peer reviewed and edited, but like, man, did it take a long time. And like, you look at it, you're like, that's just 2,000 words. Like, that's not that crazy, but like it gets up there. So there's a lot of background stuff that people don't always see and they might not think about.
Absolutely.
So what are some of the biggest challenges that you faced as a journalist? I feel like we've kind of alluded with pay and that kind of thing, but are there other challenges that have you find yourself running into from time to time, or like one or two big things that have stood out?
Yeah. I can jump in real quick because I think I have just a fast one. I always felt like I was never able to keep up with like what was happening. So I would be reviewing a game that would take a couple weeks. A new game would come out and I'd want to do that, but like I couldn't do it fast enough. But also there are other journalists out there that are probably vying for your position, or like if you're freelance, they will get in first. So like I always felt like there was this pressure to be tweeting, be messaging people, be sending emails, being on top of reviews. There was just so much to do. And I think that was the challenge because, believe it or not, I do more than just play video games. Like I do other stuff too. And it's so hard when such a large amount of your life has to go into this one aspect, which, as we were saying before, doesn't always pay out for you or doesn't like equally give you a return that you might need. And so it was always tough to be like, oh, that guy, like, he's just better than I am. Or like, how did he got there first? Like, I feel inferior. There's this inferiority complex. And all these, like, even now I'm like nervous ticking and I'm like rolling up my mouse pad, like, because I feel like, oh no, I'm not good enough. So it's kind of stuff like that. It just feels like, man, there's such a pressure there, and it's usually always from a place of love. Like no one is ever like, I'm gonna snipe Jason out of this job and get it. It's just like they're like, no, this is where they are in their life. They're asking for this, or they're trying this thing, and it can be really tough. I think that was one of the biggest challenges I know I had for sure the entirety of like professional writing.
Yeah, I completely like sympathize with that, because the thing that is always in the back of your mind, as we were kind of just talking about, is that chaos of the industry, and knowing that there are other people out there, and getting your foot in the door is the first hurdle, but then you got to keep it. Like, I have had my byline at so many places, but an editor leaves, or I get distracted and I'm writing more for another place, and then I've published one article at IGN, like that's how that goes. And so for me, the challenge has been just keeping doing it. Between the payment stuff and the job changes, and knowing that there's always someone else out there who wants to do it too. Not in like a, oh my God, they're like Jason was saying, not in like they're gunning for me, but just, people want to do this, and it's cool. Yeah. Right. And, so that, I think that's the challenge. And also just, there's this desire to balance my interests, which are very niche and weird, the types of games I play and love, versus wanting to be the informative, knowledgeable person who's writing from an expert point of view. That's difficult too. And you kind of have to sacrifice on both ends. Like, if you want to write reviews, as we were saying, you got to sacrifice some of that other stuff. So that has been a challenge too. And just making sure that I'm not just thinking about video games can be difficult. Yeah.
Yeah, it can truly be consuming. I when I went from freelance writing to my job now, which is like a salaried position doing social media, like, I like my brain capacity is better. Like, I feel like I'm not constantly thinking about work, or like, okay, can I find an art? Can I pitch this article and make enough money so that maybe I can drop one more day at my restaurant job? And so, like, it's really nice to not have to worry about that, because I think that was probably one of my biggest challenges, was just not being consumed all the time. And I started out like, I mean, a lot of, I don't suggest this unless you just really want to, but don't work for free. I mean, I did for like a year at like this one spot, and I am very thankful. I learned a lot. I did get to review games before they came out, which was cool. And I was like, well, that's kind of a form of payment. Yeah. But I do appreciate the people there, but they were like a small to medium site, so I get it. But and even places that do pay, like, they don't pay enough, and it's just sort of that balancing act of like your self-worth. Am I okay only making $18, $20 for an article that takes me 2 or 3 hours to write or something? So you just got to really evaluate that and keep your self-worth in check, because it can be really hard to sort of not compare and not think about and not let it consume you. Yeah,
I think I want to say one thing really quick, unless you guys have more ahead.
You're good.
Despite these challenges and the negatives, like, because there's a lot, and it's kind of been like, we were even saying before we recorded that this would be very cathartic kind of an episode of letting off some steam. So if it sounds overly negative, it's really not. It's more just like we're letting off steam. But
that's a good.
At least I certainly am. And the thing I would say though is the most important thing, if you're gonna try to do this, is to just do it.
Yeah, totally.
And like the jump. Like what Jason does with the blog, and just being like, I'm just gonna go for it. And like, who cares if it's 20? I mean, I think 20 people reading your blog is awesome. I would rather have 20 people read my stuff that absolutely love it than 200 people that really don't like it and will tell you that they don't like it. It's like, okay, just move on. We're the 20 that like it. But that's the thing that I would always focus on, and that is the reason why I've written 3,000 articles or whatever, is because I just do it. And so if someone's out there listening and thinking, what how do I do it? How do I get into it? You just do it. Sit down, start your blog, start your YouTube channel, start your Twitch channel, whatever it is you want to do. And the success isn't the people who show up or whatever. It feels good. I know like wanting to do it for a job is like the dream, but it is a job and there are downsides to it. It's not completely stress-free or whatever. And so yeah, if there was any advice, if that at all, it was just do it, because you don't know. And even if you do get a job doing it, or even if you do blow up and become like the next big Twitch streamer, you don't know how long you'll do it for. So just do it.
Right.
So just do it and let that be the goal, just to keep going. And, you might have to redefine the idea of success in your mind, being like, success isn't 10 million subscribers. Success is just doing it.
I agree. Actually,
fun.
If I was to give any advice to it would be the exact same thing. And I think I would also, to your last point, don't assume greatness like right away. I think you're amazing and you're wonderful. Whoever is listening, you are fantastic, but you have to start somewhere. So like to expect to be like, I don't know, a huge streamer, like 10,000 people streaming every day, it's just not going to happen. Like you have to start somewhere. I mean, I'm not saying it's not going to happen ever. I mean, it's not going to be your first stream. So like you will get on average 0 to 3 people on Twitch, like for years, but just keep going. Stretching off of that, looking back at your entire catalog, like what are you most proud of? What has been your highlight? What has been like some of the cool things that you have done for whatever you've done, gaming, writing, articles, journalism, anything like that?
So I would say that on the side of articles, the two that were the one written piece that I'm the most proud of is last year I wrote a article. I don't remember what they changed the headline to at GameSpot off the top of my head. Something like "Move over Dark Souls, Kingsfield is the next game that indie developers are taking inspiration from," or something like that. So I interviewed a bunch of indie developers who are making games based on Kingsfield, which is the series that FromSoft started with, right? And
I just played it on my stream a few weeks ago. It was
great.
I did,
Awesome.
first time.
How did you feel about it? Did you like it?
Dude, that game kind of blew my mind. It looked kind of like trash, but at the time it was probably amazing. But no, it was really fun. And it's in my collection of games so far for this year I've streamed that I'm like, I would stream that again. Like for sure, that's a fun one.
Kingsfield is incredible. I think I've done like a whole article or a video, I should say, on why you should play all like Kingsfield and Shadow Tower and all of those old like first-person dungeon crawlers from FromSoft. They're awesome. So getting to interview a bunch of indie developers who also really love those games and are making games like it, I was really proud of that. I was really proud of the way that turned out. The thing that I think was the coolest thing, I mean, aside from the documentary, I guess the Metroid documentary is like the number one, right? But like, second to that would be the Kingsfield thing. And then I also interviewed the producer and director of Final Fantasy XI on its 20th anniversary last year. And that was really cool because
it's incredible.
That's a game that, I've come and gone from that game a lot, but it's always kind of been in the background of my life for like, I don't know, almost 15 years now in some form or fashion. So that felt really cool. And it was because I'd done some other interviews or whatever, but that one was the first time where I was like, this feels like I made it.
I made it.
And that was just like an email thing. I wasn't even really talking to them, but that was still cool.
Though.
So that it would be that. And honestly, just the first time, my first byline at places like IGN and then GameSpot and all that stuff. GameSpot's kind of my home right now, which that in and of itself feels cool because I've always read GameSpot and
it's been around for ages.
And so just there's a lot of little highlights like that, or even just when Dia Lucina, who she writes for Paste, and she's also into like Kingsfield, but she's really into wizardry. And when I did a wizardry video, she
that's a throwback.
She like retweeted it and was like followed me, and we were talking about it, and it got this huge like boost in views from it. And to someone who's been in the industry for so long, who likes that same kind of games, and who I wouldn't say I'm intimidated by, but I really respect Dia's work. And for her to be like, yo, this is good, and you get wizardry, I was like, all right, cool. Okay. Aww. That felt good.
That's nice. Yeah. That's good. Casey, what about you? What's your highlight so far?
Sure. I would say my first, I want to say it was my first pitch ever. It was to inverse.com. It was for the 25th anniversary of Final Fantasy VII, which I know like the OG game hasn't hasn't aged super well, but it has as I've talked about on this podcast,
it's still
before,
influential.
It has a special place in my heart. It was a game I played like during some really hard times in my life as a kid, so it holds a spot for me. But for their 25th anniversary, they just wanted pitches about the game, so I'd kind of written about it a little bit before on like a blog, but I pitched an article about how the game helped me survive like a time in my life where like I literally wanted to die.
Oof.
And so it was just really cool getting to work with an editor like at that capacity, because that was I think pretty early on when I first started writing, and she was a great editor. Her name is Jen. And it was really cool. I still look back at that and I really love it. And then also just getting in at IGN, like it started through like DMing Kat on Twitter, who's like their senior news editor, and I just was like, and she responded, and I was like, oh, okay, this is happening.
Hey,
and like it was just it was really cool. So and then now I'm like full-time salaried, which is really nice.
Dang, there you go.
And so
that's
hopefully
awesome.
I don't know where we'll go from here, but we'll see.
I think a highlight, which is kind of cool, that I'm always kind of proud of, but I think it's just this mystery, but I had to sign a letter of release with Square Enix at the time because they wanted to use a quote from my review for Tactics Ogre, let us cling together, on the PSP on the box of the game.
Oh, really?
I was like, really? Only in Japan?
Oh, I was like, I think I might have a copy somewhere. I don't.
Yeah, no, I have a copy, but I was like, wow, really? And my editor was like, yeah, we don't get these too often. Like, it's up to you. And I was like, oh my god, of course.
Well,
so
why
like,
not?
Yeah,
That's
why
awesome.
not? And so I can't remember the exact quote, but they wrote out like, we want to use this specifically. Like, can we use it? And it was something like the like time reversal system where you can go back and like make a change and not have to play the whole level. I said was like revolutionary to the system or to the genre, which I think it is. I think it's great, and people still use that. You still see it nowadays. Okay, and with those major highlights, thank you for sharing. We're going to wrap up our first part here. Brendan, Casey, thank you so much for chatting with us about games and reviews and journalism and so many intricate things. I really appreciate that. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. But if you haven't already followed us, please do so at RPGaymer on Instagram and Twitter. And then give us your thoughts over on Discord, too. We love chatting about games. There's so many new people I've joined in the past few weeks. It's been really fun just to talk that way. And as always, if you love this podcast, wherever you are listening, leave us a review, leave us a like, leave us a comment. We really do appreciate those, and we love growing with you all and talking about games. All right, guys, we'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. Okay, and we are back. We are well rested and well watered and well bathroomed. We're all ready to go for part 2 here. We're gonna play a little game, as is a tradition here. So, Brendan, thanks for joining us for our game here. We're gonna throw you to the wolves. No, just kidding. As we were discussing earlier, we've all kind of reviewed games, or at least have discussed it in a professional sense. So we were thinking it could be fun if we maybe throw each other a few old and or new games, give a quick 1 or 2 sentence review and a quick score. Think of it like maybe in a tweet.
Oh, a score
for that game. I mean, you can score like 7 out of 10, A plus, B plus, double S. I'll just make it easy. Everything is a 7. Something like that. Just kind of be fun, be creative, be cool, and give a chance to flex your creativity on the spot. Cool. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Sounds terrible.
Sounds terrible. Well, that's...
Are we just going like right off the top of our heads, or are we going to have a second to think about it?
I mean, you can do whatever you want, my friend. I will start really easy because we talked about this in our planning meeting. I'm just going to roll it to you. I need you to give me a review for Chrono Trigger. Quick and dirty.
Patrick is not gonna like this. I have not beaten Chrono Trigger. I have picked it up so many times. I think it's innovative. I think the music is amazing. I think the pixel 2D art style is incredible. But I like Chrono Cross more, which is like a blasphemous thing to say. Probably. I don't know. I don't remember how. I don't know how Brendan feels about that.
I was gonna say, hey Casey, I agree.
Oh, yes. See, Patrick's not here, and he's one-sided.
He can't. He's gonna be so he's such a Chrono Trigger stan, which is incredible. But based on what I've played, I give it an 8 out of 10. Great music, great art style. I love the battling. I've never been able to stick with it. I think it has a legacy, but you know.
I like the clarifier. Like I haven't played it fully because like it's probably going to be a common theme throughout a lot of these games that I'm about to get into.
Oh sure, totally. Yeah, I think on my list I've beaten like 2 of them, even though they're all games I like. So I will go next. We'll pick Brendan.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. You mentioned this earlier. I don't remember if it's something that is in the podcast or was edited out, but Resident Evil 4, OG or remake, your pick.
Oh, Resident Evil 4 is a landmark game. I think I'll stick with the remake because that's the most freshest in my mind. It does an incredible job at recreating the original game's pacing and tone, but with a more gritty and I guess more in line with like Resident Evil 2 remake. And the changes that it does are very subtle, but in my mind, elevate it beyond the original. I know some people think that, you know, they're equal or you know, doesn't overwrite the original. I actually think you don't even need to play the original, just play the remake. It's incredible. I would give it a triple S+. There you go. Jason, tell me your thoughts about Patapon.
Patapon. Wow, what a hot take, because I feel like this is a game that I have played.
I don't even know that I know it.
Am I thinking of Loco Roco? Patapon is the little dudes with spears. That's Patapon?
Yeah. And they go like pon, Patapon.
Pon. Yeah, exactly. Okay, I think wow, I am so thrown off right now.
If you want a slightly less deep cut, I can throw you one. Okay.
No, I like Patapon. I just got to think about it. I remember playing this game between like swim meets, like when I was in high school.
Okay.
Okay, Patapon is one of those games that was more artistic and gamey on the PSP. It had several of these, but its cute style, I think, is, I don't know, it has like a almost dichotomy with its devious level design, and the music that's included is kind of catchy. But I think it was good enough that it's a sleeper hit that I think if you are someone that's like, oh, I like video games, but not the games that you're going to play, you could definitely look at Patapon nowadays, because I feel like it's a deep cut hot take no one else really knows about. I think there's also 3 of them. I think there's a few.
Yeah.
Perfect. So I feel like there's enough content for you to enjoy, and I think they're all on the PSP. So you need to bust out that brick if you want to play it.
I think some of them were cross-released on the PS3. I think 3 might have
been.
I don't remember.
I also thought 3 as well. So hopefully it is. I think it was inferior to Loco Roco. I think that was the more fun game, and I associate them around the same time. But I would still say it's a solid. It's a solid 7 out of 10. I think it's not bad. I think that it could stand for a little more love, which I think came from the later games. Wow, nice. I have not thought about Patapon in like a decade. That
didn't do anything for me. I'm still not sure what it is.
Yeah, all good. That's a.
If you get a second, you should just look it up because it's cute.
It is super cute. It is super cute.
100% will. I like the name. It's fun to say.
Patapon. Yeah, exactly. Okay, I'll throw one right back to Brendan. Okay. All right, I need you to go back, way back, and I want to get your review thoughts on the original Pac-Man.
On the original Pac-Man. All right, well, I've played Pac-Man, but the majority of my Pac-Man understanding comes from Tim Rogers' like 9-hour review of it.
Oh my god.
Oh my gosh.
How do you review that for 9 hours?
I think it's only like 5.
It's only like 5 hours.
Okay. Just 5.
Jeez.
So
the game is one screen. I don't.
Yeah, I think it's an elegant and innovative game. Certainly caught on really big at the arcades. I think later re-releases are more interesting than the original. I find the original to be a little bit too simplistic to play for longer than a few minutes. And that said, I think that the way that it incorporates it incorporates 2 player modes of being you're on the defensive and then you're on the offensive. I think it's a really interesting like design decision to give the player a way to be both offensive and defensive at the same time. I would give it, obviously its legacy is big, but if I'm just reviewing it as a product itself, I would give it a 6 out of 10.
Okay. I could see how it doesn't hold up, to modern standards. I feel you.
Yeah, I would say it does not.
All right. So Casey.
Yes, sir.
I want to know your thoughts about Final Fantasy 3.
Oh man.
The real 3 or like just SNES 3?
Oh, I forget. Yeah, I forget that was. I haven't played it. I'm like 6 onward. I haven't really played any of the ones before.
You haven't played 3, 4, or 5?
I haven't.
Okay.
I have not, and if I have, it's literally
okay.
For like
well, I have another one. I have a backup for you.
Okay.
I want to know your thoughts about Crash Bandicoot.
There you go.
Crash Bandicoot.
Throwback.
Kind of.
How are you gonna give him Crash Bandicoot, but you gave me Patapon? Like,
well, because if I got Patapon,
you're good.
I had a list.
I don't know her.
I had a list of 8. I have a list of 8. I got plenty. I'm gonna.
You got a deep one. Okay.
Yeah.
No, you're good. Go ahead, Casey.
So Crash Bandicoot, I am terrible at platformers, so it is not a game that I excel at in any capacity. I do enjoy it for what it is. I think Crash is a great protagonist. I think that the platforming, even though it is older, I think it's smart, albeit maybe a little difficult, even outside of my inability to have any sort of skill at platforming. But I kind of would like with Pac-Man. I think it definitely has a legacy to it. I think it paved the way for many things and was also inspired by much of what came before it. I tried replaying and obviously reviewing the OG, but the remake is or remaster, whatever they call it, is I'm equally as terrible at it.
It stayed the same.
Yeah. I think that as the series has evolved, it's gotten better, or like more accessible. But I'm not good at it. But I won't deter that from giving it probably a 7 out of 10. I think.
Oh wow. Okay.
I don't know. I haven't played it enough. What would you give it? Was that too generous?
Shots fired. Too generous. No, it's yours. No comment.
No comment. You can give me a comment.
No. So I'm gonna wait until this podcast goes out, then I'll leave a nasty comment in the actual comments.
Yes. Oh, please do. Yeah. Please. Okay. Remind yourself in June.
Don't worry, I won't forget.
All right. I will give you because I did Brendan first. So Jason, give me a short little review on BioShock.
Oh, BioShock. The first one?
Yes, first one.
Okay. Any game where you can choose to save or kill children is crazy. But I do think that it's a wonderfully scary game that you just want to keep playing. So I feel like the story, if you like story and you're like, what is story doing in my first person shooter? That means you're playing BioShock. And I think it was one of, for me personally, my first games that really showed that generation's power on consoles. It looked really, really good. And I actually have a soft spot in my heart for that game. I think it's probably in, I would say, my top 25 games of all time, if not like pushing the top 10. I would probably give that game like a 9 or 9.5 out of 10. I think that game is very, very good. Worth playing. Like today, like still go back. You haven't played BioShock. I think it's the Infinite Collection, whatever is on PlayStation, just play that. Like it's still really, really fun.
I'll give one to Brendan. So you talked about Kingsfield a bit earlier. I'm curious. We'll jump far in the future to last February. What are your thoughts on Elden Ring?
Oh,
not Kingsfield.
Okay.
Well, wait.
Did you play Elden Ring?
Yes, I played Elden Ring. Okay.
Can we pause for a minute? Did that game actually come out a year ago?
It came out a year ago.
I think it was last February.
Dude. Yeah. Okay. Wow. Carry on.
Okay. So I need to just hold on. Give me a second here. Because I need to preface this by saying FromSoft is one of my absolute favorite developers of all time. I love almost all of their mainline. I mean, I love all the Souls games. I love Bloodborne. I love all that stuff. And I love Kingsfield. I love Shadow Tower. I haven't played Evergrace or some of this other stuff, but I'm just saying this. And I love Armored Core as well. I'm a big Armored Core
This is
fan.
such a big preface. I don't know what you're going to get to at the end here.
Dun, dun, dun.
I think Elden Ring is a solid 7 out of 10.
Oh, wow.
I think Elden Ring's open world throws off its pacing in a way that really disappoints me. I know for a lot of people, they really like the wonder of exploring this place. It's very visually interesting, but it's mechanically, for me, just not engaging at all. I think that having long stretches of time, for me, what makes FromSoft games so enjoyable is this constant mechanical engagement, and there's this constant mechanical conversation between the developer and the player. You're always making decisions. You're always kind of on your back foot, but not always overwhelmed. It can be very overwhelming, but you're always thinking and making a decision. And when I'm out in the open world in Elden Ring, I just felt like I wasn't making a lot of decisions. It had none of the mechanical depth or engagement that I expect from a FromSoft game. Now, that doesn't mean that I think it's bad. I was just disappointed and honestly kind of surprised at how little of that From Software fiddly engagement, mechanical engagement there was there. For me, I still love it. I think it's a better game on New Game Plus when you can kind of just beeline it for the dungeons, which I think are some of the best dungeons they've ever made. And I think the game is better. And it's like, I know a lot of people are like, after Lanedell, I think the game just kind of fell off. And for me, I'm like, I love everything after Lanedell. Like it's all dungeons. So yeah, that's where I really like the game. So yeah, it's kind of certainly not the most commonly held opinion on that game, but that's how I feel about it for sure.
You heard it here, folks. Brendan hates Elden Ring.
It's the worst.
It's the worst game ever.
7 out of 10.
Okay, Brendan, I only actually have one more game on my list here, so I hope that you've played this one, but I think it's a bigger one. What about Final Fantasy 15?
Okay. Yes, I played Final Fantasy 15.
Okay.
I think Final Fantasy 15 is a decent game in most respects. I think the things about Final Fantasy 15 that I think hold it back are pretty obvious flaws that stem from its production. That's 10-year tumultuous development process. I think the Royal version. So am I reviewing vanilla or Royal? How about that?
Vanilla.
Oh, okay. So I think Final Fantasy 15 as a vanilla game is actually not very good. I think the story delivery and presentation suffered for trying to be like a cross media product. And I personally find the battle system to be a little too sloppy for my taste. Sloppy in that I just felt like there was never really anything like there's a lock-on system. There's all, you're able to time your attacks or whatever, but I just never felt like I had the direct control over what Noctis was doing that I wanted to. I think Royal makes it better when you can kind of swap between party members, but when you're just playing as Noctis, I don't know. I never really clicked with it. And there are so many things about that game that I wanted to like. I think the soundtrack is incredible. I think that the characters are all really great. The ending made me cry, even though I didn't really feel like I had a complete story, but like the way that the voice actors and the music and everything really they deliver it well. That ending is just so good. And I think that as a return to Final Fantasy, it's certainly not what I wanted. I'm someone who I like pretty much every Final Fantasy, with the exception of Final Fantasy 2, I think is a little bit weird. And I would say that 15 is right above 2 in my personal rankings. I'm not really a big fan of 2. So I would give this game a 5 out of 10.
5 out of 10. Now consolidate all that down to a 2-sentence review.
Final Fantasy 15 is a ambitious game that doesn't make good on its promise, and it's held back by poor story presentation and a uneven battle system.
5 out of 10.
5
Got
out of
10. Well done, Beam.
Okay, so I have 2. So just in case you haven't played one of them, tell me about. I'm trying to decide between the 2. Turok Dinosaur Hunter on the Nintendo 64.
Turok, man, that
that's a throwback.
Gets me in the heart. Turok was so good. I don't remember a ton. I literally don't think I've played it since I was a kid and it like came out on the N64. But I think the thing that stands out the most for me in my memories are just the weapon design, and the violence. I don't remember the plot. I just know that there are dinosaurs and that you can use all these really cool, fun weapons. And I remember spending hours with that game, just killing everything with I feel like, is it the cerebral or something?
Yeah,
that's the second one.
That's
that was it, like would stick to their head and then explode. I don't entirely remember, but that was like my favorite weapon, and I was like, I want this in real life. I don't think I'd use it against a person, but
wow, Casey,
it would be cool to have. It was a very violent shot. No, it was not. But that's all I really remember. But I think I would probably give it, I don't know, like a 7 out of 10.
7 out of 10.
7 out of 10.
The nostalgia.
I really did. They remake it? Am I making that up?
They got to re-release at some point.
Yeah, they re-released it, and they tried to reboot it with a game on.
Maybe
the
that's what I'm
360,
thinking of. Is the reboot?
Yeah,
but
I think
I would like to play it again.
One of my big memories for Turok was like, first off, it looked amazing at the time on the 64, but it had cheat codes, and I was like, nice, like you can get like,
I think like big head mode.
Yeah, big head mode. I think there was like rainbow.
Blood,
like
you
like
could
everything
change
was
the colors of the blood. Yes.
Yeah.
More memories.
See, there you go. And I remember they had that big ass gun that was like the big stick, but it would shoot that lightning bolt out or whatever, and it would explode. Yeah. And then like the frame rate would go to like 2, and it would be like really bad.
It's the Chrono Scepter. Yes.
Chrono Scepter. Yeah, I was like, it's something scepter.
Gosh.
Yeah, exactly. And I would use it to kill Campaigner, was that his name, the main bad guy? Oh my god, the memories. It was what a fun game.
There like also like a really big fat boss?
There was there were these
who had like, maybe either had breasts,
so
or like, I might be thinking
I think I know what you're talking about. There are these big ogre like monsters,
like a big belly,
and they have a big belly, and some of them would have rocket launchers, but at first
they have like, rocket launchers. At
first they show up, and I forget what they're called, but they're like mutant gorilla dinosaurs. They're very weird.
Yeah, something like that.
What a wild game.
What a game.
Good
what a
memories,
game.
Man.
All right. Well, thanks for everyone joining us down apparently nostalgia lane for all these old games. That was great. Nice reviews. We'll get the hate in the comments in just a few minutes here. But that's it. I think that's a good wrap for today. So thank you, Brendan, for being here. Thank you, Casey, for inviting Brendan. Brendan, where can our listeners find you? Where can they see you online and follow your work?
So for now, the best place to find me is on Twitter at Brendan_LH. That's BRENDAN_LH. Or you can find my YouTube channel at youtube.com/thecrawl.
Nice. Be sure to follow Brendan. It was super great. Thank you for being here.
I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, for sure. And on behalf of Casey and I, thank everyone for listening. If you do enjoy your content, again, please reach out to us and chat with us. Twitter, Instagram at HeyRPGaymer. And then over on our Discord, we talk about games all the time. If you do like this show or any of our content, no matter where you're listening to, even on YouTube or your podcast, we do appreciate your support. If you want to head over to RPGaymer over on Patreon, we love any donations there. They help out bringing guests like Brendan, improving our equipment, getting new games, having new giveaways online. All these things are from support like you all, and we really do appreciate that. So if you do want to think about helping us out, please do so. And if you enjoyed listening to us today, be sure to be on the lookout for our next podcast. Status Effects should be coming up pretty soon. Well, we appreciate everyone being on here. Thank you for listening. Now go out there and get gaming.